My stand is broken. Okay, that should work. That should work. Hello, hello, hello. Just waiting for... Hello. My usual stand is broken, so I'm sort of like makeshift right now. Hi, happy Friday. Hi, Jay. I'm just fixing... Let's see. Make Hillary fix the stand. It was Hillary. She broke the stand. From Provo, Utah. Hello, hello. I will wait just a few minutes for people to pop in. Hi. While we're doing that, so we'll talk about Ottawa. Alia Thomas. Hello from Medford, Oregon. Hi, Medford, Oregon. Medford, Oregon. Hi. Thank you for being here. Early-ish? Oh yeah, I got on a minute early. So I could adjust my situation. My stand is broken, so I wanted to make sure it looked okay. I think this is okay for now. My other one, this little piece broke off, and I'm missing the little piece. I have to find it. It's somewhere. I'm echoing. Hi. Am I echoing? How's the sound? Is the sound okay? Make Justin Castro fall in the snow. This whole situation is wild. You've got a double audio echo. Sounds good. Someone says I have a double echo. Other people are saying I'm good. Okay. Fine. Okay. Okay. Oh, I was. All right, we're going to talk about Ottawa and then Alia Thomas and then San Francisco. Some cool stuff happened in San Francisco. Seems fixed now. Okay, it might have been I had just plugged it in. Before we get started on that, while we're waiting for people to join in, has anyone been following Bob Saget? This story is getting weirder and weirder. So, do you have on glitter? Can you see glitter? This story is getting stranger and stranger. So, Bob Saget, we all know he passed away a little bit ago. What did Bob know about Hillary? No, it's getting weird. So, Bob Saget had just started his tour. Hello, San Francisco, where's your disco? Bob Saget had just started his comedy tour. He was in Orlando. That was his first group of shows. Staying at, I believe, a Ritz-Carlton in Orlando. He checked in, or he got to his room around 2 a.m., I believe. I'm guessing coming from his show. And was found in the morning. They did basically a welfare check on him when his family couldn't get a hold of him. He was supposed to be checking out. They found him on the bed with his hand over his chest, and he was not alive. So, how many strange Hollywood stories have we had? I know, this is strange. Okay, so it immediately looked like, okay, maybe he had a heart attack or some sort of cardiac arrest or heart failure. That's what, to me, I thought at first. Well, then some of the autopsy reports came back, and by the way, there was no signs of foul play or anything like that. There wasn't even apparent, from what we heard at first, there was no... That's why I assumed it was a heart attack, because there was no obvious injury or anything like that. So the autopsy report comes back and said that he had trauma to his head. So, okay, people were thinking, wow, he must have accidentally hit his head on the headboard or doing something, didn't think much of it, and then went to sleep and something happened. Well, now we're finding out that the trauma is a lot more severe to his head. So, the trauma that he has in his head, it wasn't just like he fell and hit his head or he smacked his head on something. This was the same amount of trauma that would be seen if someone fell from about 30 feet or if it was a serious car accident or a motorcycle accident or being hit in the head with, they said, something like a baseball bat. That's the type of injury he had. So we find out this information. Did he perform in his skit that night? I'm curious to watch. Oh, I don't know. I'm sure that's somewhere. I'm sure his comedy that he performed earlier that night is somewhere. So now, saw the video where he said he would be found dead soon. Okay, that is creepy. Well, now the family is suing to block his autopsy report from being public record. So more and more information that comes out, the more and more it doesn't make any sense. Sounds like the M word. It sounds like something is going on. And when I see that the family, I can understand them not wanting to have pictures come out, but to, oh wow, wonder if he owed money for drug. I don't know. And I should note there were no drugs or alcohol in his system. There was like prescribed medication, but no drugs or alcohol. But it's getting weird, and I can understand the family suing to not want his like pictures released, but to not want the autopsy report released, that's where you're like, okay, what is going on? Do they not want the public to know something? Are they trying to protect his legacy? Was there more going on? The whole thing is just, they said he had COVID at the time. Yes, I did see where they said he had COVID, but that still wouldn't account for that kind of head injury. Like, it was a really, really severe head injury. Maybe an affair, I don't know. But there's definitely a lot more going on. And like I said, the more information that comes out, the more it just doesn't seem to make any sense. Anyway, okay, I think we can get started. Let's look at what is going on in Ottawa. So they're starting to make arrests. I believe there were about 70 people arrested today in Ottawa. The longer this Freedom Convoy goes on, the harder and harder Justin Trudeau. He pissed somebody off. I don't know, but we'll stay tuned. I understand the family not wanting like pictures and stuff like that released. I don't like it when they do that. But to not want the autopsy report be public record, that's very interesting. And by them suing, it almost makes people even more curious. Oh, bye, Gary. Get some sleep. Anyway, so in Ottawa, the government is pushing back hard. They're arresting people. They threatened to freeze people's bank accounts. They were threatening to take people's animals away. It's getting really, really desperate on the government. Castro is going to have to leave the country when his term is over. People are not happy. Yeah, he continues to slander them. He continues to double down. And now some of the organizers have been arrested. So this is one of the organizers. I believe her name, correct me if I'm wrong, Freedom Convoy. I believe her name is, Tamara Litch and Chris Barber. So both of them have been arrested. And I think there was one more person arrested. But these are some of the organizers for the Freedom Convoy. And this is Tamara. I believe this was yesterday that it was released. But she basically knew that this was going to happen, that she was going to be arrested. So this is what she had to say before she released this video.
There's a pretty good chance. Well, I think it's inevitable at this point. But I'll probably be going somewhere tomorrow where I'll be getting 3 square meals a day. And that's okay. I'm okay with that. And I want you to know that I'm not afraid.
Wow, so that was the night before. The next day she was arrested. And I think She was arrested for, it had something to do with mischief. I'll let you know what it is. Saget. Canadian law enforcement are using crowd control tactics such as horses, pepper spray, and clubs to arrest and push the Freedom Convoy protesters out of downtown Ottawa. Law enforcement launched a campaign to break up the protest, which has gone on for weeks after truckles. She is inspiring. You could tell she was upset, and she was like, I'm going to be strong. The demonstration has since grown to oppose mandates and restrictions. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau invoked the Emergencies Act, enacted in 1989 as a successor to the War Measures Act, on Monday as a last resort to deal with the Freedom Convoy protest that has camped outside Parliament for roughly 3 weeks. Law enforcement began what could be its final crackdown on the protest on Friday, today, after thousands of officers reportedly circled the protest area. Police began making arrests, towing vehicles several hours into the sweep. Police have arrested 70 protesters and removed over 20 vehicles. Later in the afternoon, police broke out heavy crowd control tactics such as horses, clubs, and tear gas to push protesters back. By the way, I do have to say, this is a peaceful protest, like probably one of the most peaceful protests I've ever seen. And this just shows you what a weak leader, in my opinion, Justin Trudeau is. It's getting to these measures. I would think that, and by the way, the reason that they're going to such drastic measures is because what the Freedom Convoy doing is effective. They've already listed restrictions in several areas in Canada. And in my opinion, a good leader would talk to the people. Okay, let me talk to you. Let me hear you out. We'll see if we can make a compromise. But no, he doubles down and he slanders them. There was actually a young girl. She was 37 years old, works in Parliament, and is a conservative and is actually Jewish. And she got up and she said, you know, what Justin Trudeau is doing is not right, and you keep slandering them. Well, then Justin Trudeau himself said to her in Parliament that she was siding with swastika holding people, basically, and she is Jewish. And this is how he looks at his very own people. He slanders and lies about them, says that this is a fringe minority, when we know that's not true. These are just regular working middle class people that do nothing but help society. And he slanders them. Instead of meeting with them, instead of talking with them, even just hearing them out, he goes and hides, and then he slanders them on television and in Parliament and invokes the Emergencies Act on them. This is scary. So it says 2 other organizers. This was Tamara, who we just heard. 2 other organizers, Chris Barba and Tamara Leach, were arrested by police on Thursday. Ottawa police confirmed the arrest on Friday. Barba is facing several charges of counseling to commit the offense of mischief. Counseling to commit the offense of disobey court order, and counseling to commit the offense of obstruct police. Leach, Tamara, that's the woman that we heard earlier today, she's being charged with counseling to commit the offense of mischief. On Monday, Trudeau claimed that the Emergencies Act would be used to break illegal blockades set up by protesters. This is from Justin himself. We're not using the Emergencies Act to call in the military. We are not suspending fundamental rights or overriding the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. We are not limiting people's freedom of speech. We are not limiting freedom of peaceful assembly. We are not preventing people from exercising their right to protest legally. We are reinforcing the principles, values, and institutions that keep all Canadians free. Interesting. I just think this could have gone a lot better. And I think this is proof that the the truckers are winning. Otherwise, they wouldn't have to be so desperate to try and shut them down. They're winning and they're effective. So we'll see what happens. Canadians are free, huh? Sounded like the 1940s hit Canada. I mean, this is what was, and it's so interesting too because the Canadian government, even Justin, when we were having those protests in Cuba, they stood with the Cubans. And this is what they did to Cubans. They started taking things away so they couldn't communicate. They were blocking their internet access so they couldn't communicate. And in places like Cuba, if you speak out against the regime, if you speak out against the government, um, yeah, you basically can't do that. But that's what's happening right now in Canada. These people, they're not doing anything wrong. They're not, if there is any sort of violence, it is such a minority, and all of those truckers are also so quick to call that out. They say all the time, this is peaceful, this is peaceful. And they're being slandered by their very own government. Hello, John. Let me see what I just saw this tweet. Let's see. This is Cernovich. On Twitter, he says, what should the truckers do now? Hard to say. They won the moral legitimacy battle. Don't believe those polls. Canadians know. It was a bad day for the regime. Strategic retreat and game plan next move is what I do. They showed their courage. They won. Now stay alive. Yeah, it's hard to say what they should do now. Someone just said the only violence is being perpetrated by and slandered by the U.S. media. Yes. And I think it's because the U.S., I think the reason you haven't seen more of our leaders speak out for the truckers is because they're afraid that this is going to happen in the U.S. And it might. You've already seen people talk about planning a convoy to Washington, D.C. Apparently, it's supposed to start in California, I believe in the middle of March, and go out to D.C. Yes. Bouncy houses and snowball fights. I know. So scary. But it's true. That just shows you what a terrible leader he is. This isn't a fringe group. These are your regular middle class truckers. Your middle class is basically the engine that runs any country or any democracy. No pun intended, truck drivers, engines, but it's true. That's the, and he couldn't even meet with them or hear them out, just automatically called them anti-vax. They are not anti-vax. The majority of them are vaccinated. This doesn't have to do with the vax. This has to do with mandates. And they make it very clear, and this is bigger than just the mandates that are right in front of you, because you give a little bit of control over to the government, they take more and more and more. And the goalpost will be moved and moved and moved until you have nothing left. And that's what the truckers realize and understand. And they say this, they'll say, you can go ahead and take everything from me. This is bigger than that. This is about my children and my grandchildren and future generations and the future of freedom in this country. That's what it's about to them. Yeah, now you have police on you have mounted police in Ottawa, and you have images of them just trampling people. Somebody says Canadian police trampling peaceful protesters. At some point, the media will have to stop providing cover for this authoritarianism. It's exactly what it is. Yeah, Lance said Trudeau is just trying to appear tough on the world stage. stage, but this is no, I agree. This is really showing his weakness, and this is showing a weakness in argument. If you stand behind, and this just proves that this has nothing to do with safety, because if you stand behind what you believe in, if you know that what you believe in is true, if you really do believe that you are on the side of good, that this is about safety, then you would have no fear with meeting with the organizers and talking to them or having a debate, but instead he immediately goes to the slander. He immediately goes with trying to shut it down any and every way possible. Crazy. All right, before we go to Leah, I'm actually, weak leaders turn into tyrants every time. Yeah. It's like little man syndrome government style. Idea, play recordings of Kamala's cackle. Protesters will disperse immediately. An incredibly painful noise. Yeah, one of my favorite ones was during the BLM protests. Someone was saying, if you want to get them to stop, just play the national anthem and they'll all take a knee. Wish we could trade BLM and Tifa for the Canadian truckers. And that's the thing too. That's what Trudeau. I can't say his name right now. He praised the BLM protests. I'm sure he met with BLM organizers. I'm sure he was down with all of those when we were actually in more of an emergency than we are now. Okay, speaking of people speaking up, I have this audio clip for you. We're going to talk about school boards for just a minute. Then we'll talk about Alia Thomas. Because. So, Justin is lucky his protesters are actually peaceful. Bezos kicked BLM to the curb. Yes. Is that Gypsy? Gypsy is right. So, Amazon dropped Black Lives Matter off their charities list. And this is coming amidst all of this scrutiny over the Black Lives Matter funds. So they're actually not allowed to fundraise in California right now because they haven't provided the paperwork to show what's happening with their money. So they raised $90 million. I think about $8 million of that was given to certain communities. I can't remember for what. About $22 million of that was given to other organizations, and now there's $60 million that is just there and no one's in charge, and they haven't submitted their paperwork to show where that money's going and how it's being used. So they're getting a lot of scrutiny. Fairly, I've always thought they were a fraudulent organization. And here's the thing too, Patrice Kahn Cullors, one of the co-founders of BLM, has said that she went on $1 million shopping spree for homes. She spent about $3.2 million on 3 different homes. And people were saying why, people were criticizing her for saying she was using funds that were given to BLM for that. And of course she says, no, I haven't. No, I haven't. But then you also look and her name is in all these other organizations as well. And BLM gave $21 million, I think almost $22 million to other organizations. Well, who were the organizations that they gave that money to? What did those organizations do with that money? Because yes, $60 million is unaccounted for, but what organizations did that $22 million go for? Was it an organization that Patrice Kahn Cullors was tied to? You can put your names on organizations. It's a lot of money. And just to show you, again, BLM's true colors, there was a person who attempted to assassinate a Democratic, was it someone that was trying to be elected? Louisville mayoral candidate says family further trauma. Yes, okay, this is their true colors. BLM chapter spends $100K to bail out Kentucky activist charged with attempted murder. The 21-year-old activist charged with trying to murder a Kentucky mayoral candidate has been released from jail after his $100,000 bond was posted by a bail fund supported by the local BLM chapter. Quintez Brown's cash bond was paid Wednesday afternoon by the Louisville Community Bail Fund, which is an arm of the BLM Louisville. He is accused of firing multiple shots inside the Louisville office of mayoral hopeful Craig Greenberg on Monday, walked free from the Metro Department of Corrections just hours later. BLM Louisville organizer Chanel Helm, who co-founded the bail fund, told the outlet that Brown would be safer out of prison and claims that he was likely suffering from PTSD after 2 years of social unrest. In this case, we're dealing with someone who has mental health issues. They are calling for this individual, this young man who needs support and help, to be punished to the full extent. It is a resounding message that the people are down for the torture that has taken place in our jails and prisons. This is an awful organization. And by the way, a lot of people that are involved in BLM, they want to completely abolish prisons. Less than 48 hours after a far-left BLM activist tried to literally murder a politician, the radical left bailed out their comrade out of jail. It's just jaw-dropping. And now the person who is at the other end of this, the mayoral candidate, what's his name? Craig Greenberg, is saying that he's even further traumatized because they let him out. Family is further traumatized after activist charged with attempted murder is free on bail. So this is Greenberg. By the way, Greenberg is a Democrat. Louisville mayoral candidate Craig Greenberg said on Thursday that he and his family have been further traumatized after activist charged with attempted murder was released on bail. He goes on to say, "Our criminal justice system is clearly broken. It is nearly impossible that someone can attempt murder on Monday and walk out of jail on Wednesday. Sadly, like others who suffer from a broken system, my team and family have been traumatized again by this news." The BLM Louisville Twitter account posted multiple tweets explaining the reasons it came to Brown's aid, including support of the abolition of prisons. This is who they are. The organization argues that Brown is not a flight risk and is in need of mental health services. "We believe whether you're violent or not in the confines of jail or prison can't serve your needs." This is who they are. Every single area where there was a huge protest has gotten more dangerous. None of the money, like, okay, so these other organizations that they gave money to, what did those organizations do with the money? Because it doesn't seem like any of this money has been used for outreach programs, after school programs, nothing, no sort of initiative to make communities safer. They literally just want to abolish prisons. Judge, I don't know. It's Louisville, so whoever the Louisville Progressive DA. I don't know. But I've said it before, most people don't agree with this. I think that most people that supported BLM, they did so because they thought they were supporting something good, but the more and more we find out about them, the more and more I think regular people are like, whoa, I do not support that. Just like what happened with Amazon. Whoa, I'm not supporting this. Where are the funds going? And I don't know if, because this happened just a day or two after the local Louisville chapter put up 100K to, but excuse me, Eva, no, get away. I just squirt her. Amazon dropping them from their charity list also came right after they bailed out this guy, so I don't know if that had anything to do with the decision by Amazon either. But regular people, the more and more they see this, the more and more they're like, whoa, yeah, no. So let's talk about the school board for just a second. So this dad, I don't know if you heard this, but this is a dad talking about CRT. Hello from the prison island, Australia. Hello, prison island. So this is a dad in North Carolina who is speaking at a school board meeting. And this is what he had to say about CRT. We'll take a listen.
CRT deal, because it's happening. And as a parent, I speak to other parents. There's a few things that we don't want. I'm biracial. I'm bilingual, I'm multicultural. The fact is, in America, in North Carolina, I can do anything I want, and I teach that to my children. And the person who tells my little pecan-colored kids that they're somehow oppressed based on the color of their skin would be absolutely wrong and absolutely at war with me. And I think that's the same for every parent. What the mask showed us is that the parents, the most powerful group of people in our country, that they're taking back the wheel. Now, obviously, we had to take the wheel back for the mask, but we're taking the wheel back from Washington all the way to Raleigh and into our local school board. Because CRT, all of that, the parents don't want it. It's a big fat lie. There's not one, if you believe in CRT, I want to tell you you're a liar. Because that means you look at your black neighbor and say that they're oppressed, and you look at your white neighbor and say that they're evil, regardless of the experience that you've had with them. And we're not going to do that. The parents in the United States of America, right here in North Carolina and Cabarrus County, we know that's not true because we believe the lives we live. The fact is, I've been a business owner right here in North Carolina, and I deal with white people, black people, Hispanic people. My children deal with everybody. And the racism is only happening at the government level and on the media. The fact is, you have racists, and there's you can't even find them hardly. You just hear the stories about them. But this is what we're dealing with. The parents are taking the wheel. I have an 8-year-old daughter who is absolutely dynamic, who can do anything. Athletically, intellectually, spiritually, and emotionally, she is a dynamo. And I don't want a man swimming against her in the pool. The fact is, I don't want her playing against boys in soccer. I don't even let my sons rough her up. Do you think I'm going to let your son rough her up? This is what we're talking about. Policy going back to the parents. Because if you think people who love America are willing to fight for it, you haven't met parents yet. Because I'm telling you, parents will go further down any street than anyone who loves their country alone. My name is Brian.
So that was pretty cool. That was in North Carolina. And this guy, he's actually running for elected office, local office in North Carolina. I want to say he's running for assemblyman. That courtesy of Amazon. Oh, he is running for North Carolina rep. Check him out if you can vote for this dude. What is his name? Well, I love what he said because that's a good segue into what happened in San Francisco. But he's absolutely right. You can't mess with parents. Parents love their children more than anything, and they will fight for their children. And as soon as people started overreaching and saying that parents don't have a say what their kids are being taught, as soon as these school boards started talking about CRT and things that had nothing to do with education, all of a sudden, a lot more parents started paying attention, and that's what happened in Virginia with Glenn Youngkin, and that's what just happened in San Francisco. So in San Francisco, 3 school board members were just recalled. San Francisco voters have recalled 3 school board members who spurred a parental backlash for pursuing the renaming of schools and other progressive policy changes as classrooms remained empty during the coronavirus pandemic. Initial returns Tuesday night showed that voters overwhelmingly voted yes to recall Allison Collins, Gabriela Lopez, and Fuega Malija. I don't know how to say his name. I apologize. 3 of the board's 7 members, 75% voted to remove Collins, 75% to remove Lopez, and 73% to remove Malija. The early results were dramatic enough that backers quickly declared victory. So keep in mind that those margins, 75%, 79%, because what they'll do, and I'll show you what they're going to do, and what they usually do with these recall efforts is they try to say, this is a Republican recall. These are white supremacists. Less than 9% of people in San Francisco are registered as Republican. So San Francisco is an incredibly liberal city. There's no way that was a Republican recall effort. One person said, this is London Breed. The mayor of San Francisco said, the voters of this city have delivered a clear message that the school board must focus on the essentials of delivering a well-run school system above all else. San Francisco is a city that believes in the value of big ideas, but those ideas must be built on the foundation of a government that does the essentials well. As distance learning, so keep in mind that when all this was happening, their kids were still at school. So as distance learning dragged on, school board members drew national ridicule as they moved to rename dozens of institutions, including Abraham Lincoln High School. A push to end merit-based admissions at the prestigious Lowell High School infuriated some parents and drew divisive national coverage. Collins raised the temperature further by suing the district for $87 million after she was penalized for an old tweet accusing Asian Americans of using white supremacist thinking to get ahead. So Collins was one of the board members that was recalled and was ridiculed for this tweet. Also, an overwhelming amount of Chinese immigrants voted in this recall effort. And the reason they did that is because typically, Asian families very much value education, and it seems like the school board was not focused on education. While parents were trying to get their kids back in school, they were talking about renaming 44 schools. And are we surprised? So one of the people that was recalled, Gabriela Lopez, there was an article written in the Washington Post about the recall, and it said San Francisco recalls school board members seen as too focused on racial justice. And then it says, like in the lower headline of this article, it says, in a warning for the left, critics saw misplaced priorities as the board focused on equity issues while schools remained closed. Okay, so Gabriela Lopez, one of the school board members who was recalled, tweeted this, and she said, so if you fight for racial justice, this is the consequence. Don't be mistaken, white supremacists are enjoying this, and the support of the recall is aligned with this. So now she's playing the same hand in the book that everyone else is playing. Calling your opponents, slandering your opponents into something they're not. Keep in mind that she's saying that these are white supremacists and they're aligned with white supremacy messages. This happened in San Francisco, which is overwhelmingly liberal. Less than 9% of registered voters are Republican. And it's this way of thinking. It's this way of thinking that is so out of touch with reality. This is exactly why this individual was recalled. This is exactly why parents are upset and angry and mad. There's nothing, if you want to fight for racial justice, do it. Fight all you want to fight, but when you're in your job as a school board member, your first priority should be the education of kids, not your ideology, not whatever your activist mission is. And parents, even liberal parents, do not want this crap in their schools. They want you to teach their kids reading, writing, arithmetic. Lopez went on to say about that headline, this headline says it all. If you are not outraged, you are not paying attention. No, Gabriella, you are out of touch with reality. Only 9, yep, it's, I have it up right here. Registration statistics. It's probably a little bit more now. This was a few years ago, but it shouldn't be that different. Republican, 8.6% of registered voters are registered Republicans. Yeah, but this is the mentality that people don't like. Just like that father was saying, when I go out and that I wanted to play that first, but exactly what the father was saying, you're the ones that keep telling us that this is a racist society. You're the ones that keep pushing all this racism. Yet when I go out, I have eyeballs. I know what I experience, and what you're telling me the world is not the world that I experience every single day. And I agree with him. I interact with so many people every single day of every background, and we're all nice to each other. We respect each other. We open doors for each other. We say please and thank you. And it's a nice, wonderful, kind world for the most part. It's our politicians, our elected officials, and our media that try to push this crap down our heads and make us feel divided when that's not what it is. They're telling you that your priorities as an elected official that is supposed to focus on children and their education, your priorities are off. And anytime they face any sort of criticism, anytime they, instead of looking at themselves and thinking, wow, maybe I am the problem, maybe I'm a little bit off, maybe I need to take some time to myself. No, they just double down. They just double down on stupidity. That was her reaction to the recall. Not looking inward, not wondering why an overwhelming liberal city voted to recall you. That's why you don't have a job. Because of this thinking. It's so unbelievable. And these are liberal people that, so it says, the recall effort came as the school board was trying to rename 44 schools. Nobody asked you to do that. No one asked you to do that, except for maybe some fringe activists who live in their parents' basement who call themselves Antifa. I don't know. So they tried to, and listen to this. They tried to rename 44 public schools that said it honored public figures linked to racism, sexism, and other injustices, including Abraham Lincoln, George Washington, and Dianne Feinstein. Critics argued the push made a mockery of the country's racial reckoning, and parents demanded to know why the board would waste time renaming schools when the priority needed to be reopening classrooms. The board eventually scrapped the plan after widespread uproar, which is good. These people are out of their minds. I wonder what it's like to be, whenever anything happens, I first look at myself. You know, if I made a mistake, if something happens, you know, at a job or anything like that, I look at myself first, and I'm always like, Dianne Feinstein, oh gosh, she has been in California. Is she a member of Congress right now, or the Senate? But she has been in California politics ever since since Harvey Milk. She I just read about her. So, hold on. The anti-squad. I think she became, I don't want to tell you the wrong thing. I literally just read about Dianne. So I was reading this book. Okay. San Francisco Mayor George Moscone and San Francisco Supervisor Harvey Milk were shot and killed in San Francisco City Hall by former Supervisor Dan White on November 27, 1978. Okay, so Dianne Feinstein became the mayor right after they were killed. And now she's a U.S. Senator for California. She's been in politics for a very long time. She's very old. A lot of people actually thought she was going to be retiring from the Senate this year. Okay, so that's where she started out. I just read about her in this book. Feinstein has been in the Senate since Jesus. Yeah, a long time. She was even in, I was watching it was on Netflix. It was a while back. I don't have Netflix anymore. She was a part of the Me Too trial, and yes, she was. And Dianne Feinstein, like, take away the Me Too thing, but she was disliked, and I think one of the reasons they wanted to take her name down, progressives, like super progressives, at first she was sort of that normal middle of the road Democrat, right? A moderate Democrat. And the super progressives did not think that she was progressive enough. So her own party kind of ate her a little bit. And I think that's why they wanted her name taken down off one of the schools. Interesting. Time's up, Me Too, all helping Cuomo's statements. What a joke. It's all political. I think that I have to read, I read like a whole thing about her in this book. Yeah, I'm gonna have to reread it. Homelessness. San Francisco. Oh yeah. Oh, here it is, you guys. In 2021, this is okay, so Feinstein took a balanced approach. All right, so here's a little bit of a history lesson. At the time of the assassination, so that's Harvey Milk, Feinstein had felt her career in politics was over. It seemed clear to me, noted historian David Talbot, that she was not the leader that San Francisco wanted. Too starched, too middle of the road, too goody-goody. For example, Feinstein had wanting to clean... Whoo! Okay, so remember I told you that... Who was the other guy? It was the mayor and then Harvey Milk were both assassinated, right? So Dianne Feinstein, she wasn't voted in to be the mayor. She was the next in line after what happened. So she came. All right, so I'll read that again. At the time of the assassinations, Feinstein had felt her career in politics was over. It seemed clear to her, noted historian David Talbot, that she was not the leader that San Francisco wanted. Too starched, too middle of the road, too goody-goody. For example, Feinstein had wanted to clean up the Tenderloin, the city's drugged-out red light district, but Reverend Cecil Williams of Glide Memorial Church felt she was blaming the victim when she extolled the virtues of good hygiene and hard work to the homeless. If they had a place to get cleaned up, he said, most of them would get cleaned up. Human rights, love, and understanding. She received a loud, warm applause that San Francisco audience had never given her before. This was when she started getting more progressive. So she was too middle of the road. She wanted to hold people accountable and get people off the streets, and that was way too middle of the road. A few weeks before the assassinations, Feinstein had been trekking in Nepal where she caught a bad intestinal illness. After she recovered, she decided to announce her resignation from politics on her return to San Francisco. I was firmly convinced that I was not electable as mayor. So she didn't think she would be able to be elected as mayor. She said later, but now with Milk and Moscone dead, she was the mayor. And starting out over the crowd at City Center preparing to give a speech, Feinstein told the crowd that she would make sure, as mayor, that San Francisco would continue to seek human rights, love, and understanding. She received a loud and warm applause. Feinstein took a balanced approach. She appointed a progressive to replace Milk, seeking to affirm the will of the people who had elected him. Dianne never had a good relationship with Harvey Milk, so she felt like her duty when she was put into the spot as mayor was to not give people what she necessarily wanted, but to give them what the will of the people wanted, and that was super progressives like Harvey Milk, which she was not. She was a lot more moderate. Feinstein rose to the challenge of the AIDS crisis, which was really bad in San Francisco at the time. When it hit in the early 1980s, many believed it would set back gay rights struggle. Instead, it propelled it forward. Coming out of the closet went from being a nice thing to do to becoming a precondition for building the popular support for funding research and treatment. When Supervisor Harry Britt in 1982 asked Feinstein what should be funded, she said, "Fund everything." She spent more time visiting AIDS patients and hospitals than I did. She was a giver. She was a very compassionate person. I don't want to say queenly because that sounds very negative, but she was a good queen. Feinstein proved to be the best possible leader for the crisis. This was the AIDS crisis in San Francisco. San Francisco in November of 1978 was a broken vessel on a dark sea. When deliverance finally came, San Francisco owed in large part to an unlikely leader. The reason, said Talbot, was that after the tumult of the 60s and 70s, San Francisco needed a grown-up. That was then. Since the beginning of the new century, moderate Democrats have seen their power decline against progressives. And it has changed so much that it brings us to 2021 to this school board. In 2021, the San Francisco School Board voted to strip Dianne Feinstein's name from an elementary school. Her crime was for allegedly replacing the Confederate flag in a historical flags exhibit in 1981 after it had been temporarily removed. In truth, Feinstein had agreed to replace the flag with one representing Union soldiers, but that didn't appear to matter much to anyone. Everybody seemed to understand that the progressive members of the San Francisco School Board in 2021 were targeting Feinstein for her moderation today, not for her policy toward flag exhibitions 40 years ago. Wow. And what happened to that school board? 3 of them got recalled. That just goes to show you how so much changes. And I actually don't like Dianne Feinstein. One of you said she really headed the witch hunt of Kavanaugh. She was all the Me Too and Time's Up bullcrap. But if you look at what she did for AIDS and the crisis that was happening in San Francisco at the time, she did a lot of good. And now look what they do. They will turn on you in a second if they don't feel that you are progressive enough. Interesting. Speaking of progress, Alia Thomas crushes women in Ivy League championship race night after fastest relay time. So this is progress. Alia Thomas, who used to be Will Thomas, is standing at the top. On Thursday, University of Pennsylvania swimmer Alia Thomas, formerly known as Will Thomas, crushed the women in 500-yard freestyle finals by a full 7 seconds, amounting to half the pool's length. That was the second night in a row that Thomas posted a time no woman in the meet could match. On Wednesday night, Thomas posted the fastest leg in the 800-yard freestyle relay, swimming the first leg of the race, 1 minute 44 seconds. I mean, that's pretty much it. This is worse than the steroids. It is. And I don't even know what to say at this point because most people look at this and know that it's wrong. And there could be a woman in first place, but now a woman is in second place. And I don't know what to say anymore because it's like I even watched this match and when Leah when Leah won, there were people in the audience that were cheering. So I don't know what to say. You know, like I speak out about it because it's wrong. And there's clearly a disadvantage. 7 seconds is an eternity. Yeah, and some of her some of the win margins were 30 seconds. That's like a freaking whole continent when you're in a swim competition. It's absurd. It is so obviously wrong. But until people stand up, it's going to keep happening. I really do. I feel for all of these girls in the league. I think that their very own school and the NCAA is totally throwing them under the bus in the name of progress. It's clearly unfair. It's so wrong. And not only are they being forced to compete with Leah, they're being forced to be in a locker room with Leah. Leah still has Leah's male parts. And the girls have said, some of them have said, it makes us really uncomfortable. And there are times where, you know, we've even seen Leah's parts and Leah has told us that Leah is still attracted to females. So we're making a whole slew of people uncomfortable for one person. It doesn't make any sense. And clearly, UPenn they want to win, so they have incentive to be along with this. Look, we get to pretend like we're all progressive. look, we're winning. We get to have all of these championships now. When they're taking first place slots away from biological women. But again, like, this is happening because of a lack of bravery. People know what the truth is. They know that this isn't fair, but no one's willing to step out and say anything. And I don't know what the answer is. I feel for the girls. But at the same time, people are watching this knowing it's wrong, and they're clapping for Leah. By being inclusive, they're being exclusive. They are. And this isn't, I don't want to, anytime you speak out against this, you're being called a phobic. No, because there's a lot of individuals who are trans that say this is not right. This is not representative of the trans community at all. So it's not being phobic. It's not anti anyone. It is pro women's rights, and that's it. And they're being erased. They're having things taken away from them. In California, if you are a male prisoner in a state prison and you identify as a male, you don't have to take any testosterone suppressants. You don't have to have any sort of change. All you do is you say, I am now a woman. I identify as a woman, and you fill out paperwork. You can be transferred to a women's prison, and the women have no say in the matter. We saw the same situation with We Spa, where you had a man who is in the women's changing room, which women are, that's a very sacred place because you're naked. There are young girls there. You had a man there with his stuff just right out, right in front of little girls, right in front of women. And when the women said something, they were told, sorry, you have to deal with it. That's the law. It's gender identity, not biological sex. Come to find, this one individual who is in We Spa on the women's side was actually wanted for indecent exposure. This individual had done this several times. And there are sick people that will take advantage of these things to get access to women's areas to prey upon them. It happens. And to say that it doesn't happen or to try to diminish it to such a small minority, it doesn't matter that it's a minority of people. It matters to the one person that individual traumatizes or preys upon. And just because you say, yes, there are people that will take advantage of these situations, it doesn't mean that you're talking bad about the trans community. I used to work as a mental health worker, and I'm very aware that there are bad mental health workers out there, just like there are some bad cops. There are bad people that work at nursing homes. There are bad teachers. There are people that specifically go into those fields to gain access to vulnerable populations to prey upon them. It's a very small minority, but it happens. So just to point out doesn't mean you're talking bad about the entire group. But when you open that doors up, the more loopholes you give them, the more opportunities you give bad people to take advantage of those loopholes and prey upon others. Have a separate bathroom or a separate changing room that's gender neutral and call it a day. I don't know what the answer is. Have a separate league. Allow them to compete against each other. Call it a day. Someone made a really good point about the swim team. So there's Alia Thomas, who is a biological male to female, competing against women. By the way, he was like, as a male, he was ranked number like 467 or something like that, something along those. And now as a woman, he's ranked number 1. So that's clear incentive to want to compete against women, because now you're beating everyone. Whereas before you were ranked in the 400s. But get this, so you have Alia Thomas, who is a biological male to woman who wants to compete with women. You also have another individual who's transgender, Isaac, in the league, who is a biological woman transitioning as a male, even went so far as to have top surgery. Why is Isaac not competing against the men? Like, if we're going along with this logic, right? If we're going on that you are the sex that you are the gender that you identify as, why is Isaac not competing against males? Why is Isaac not on the male swim team? Isaac still competes with women. It doesn't make sense. If you're going by their logic, Isaac is a male, right? So Isaac should be competing with males. But how are both appropriate? If we know what's appropriate clearly, but if we're going by their logic, how are both of these situations appropriate? They're not. Crazy. But as long as people just take it, I really feel for the other girls on the swim team. They didn't ask to be put in this position, but they were. But again, no one's doing anything. Lance said, I would like to take the time to thank my dog who doesn't know anything about this garbage. We don't have to discuss it. Reminds me of the Married with Children episode where Al competes against senior citizens. Exactly. And that's why you have, in high school, you have freshman varsity, junior varsity, you have rec leagues, you separate by, whoa, Alec Baldwin's trending. Let's see why Alec Baldwin's trending. You separate by age and gender and, weight in some areas, depending on the sport. All of these things so that you make it fair. If it's not fair from the very beginning, and you think about it too, they're like, oh, well, it's such a small amount of people. Yeah, but that girl that should have gone first place, which is now second place, that's her whole life. The girl who would have been eligible for a scholarship, who is now not eligible for a scholarship because she got beat out by a male, which did happen in Connecticut, track and field, I believe. That's that girl's whole world. Okay, it's a small minority. It's some people's entire world. And everything, there's certain things that I can't do because of either my height, my gender, my age, whatever. And it sucks. I would love to do those things, but I just can't because I'm not going to be a basketball player. I'm not going to play for the WNBA. I would have never been able to play. There's some things that you just, and I would think when you're transitioning from male to female, okay, there's certain things, in order to have this part of my life, there's certain things that I'll have to give up. I don't have to give up swimming, but I might have to give up competing in swimming. I think that's what a person with integrity and a person that cares about the other women on the team would do. It doesn't seem like you have a whole lot of respect for the other women on the team when you know you're at a disadvantage. Also, I learned a few things about... Well, what is this? Come on. I learned a few things about UPenn's history, and that's not the first time that UPenn has been accused, allegedly, of throwing students under the bus to make themselves look better and more virtuous. Why is Alec Baldwin trending? Alec Baldwin is being sued. So, hold on, I'm pulling up this story about Alec Baldwin. Okay, so the Santa Fe Sheriff's Office is approaching the 4-month mark of its investigation into the circumstances of Rust cinematographer Helena Hutchins' death on October 21st, 2021. In New Mexico, in which authorities are trying to get answers as to how a live round found its way in a prop gun, killing the rising filmmaker and wounding the film's director, Joel Souza. When the tragedy occurred within a church on the expansive ranch film set, in which a gun held by actor Alec Baldwin discharged the live projectile into Hutchins 42 and then into Souza 48. A spokesperson for the film production said filming would be halted and that it would they would fully cooperate. Baldwin, who also served as a producer on the Western, would go on to say in a December 2021 sit-down interview that he did not pull the trigger on the firearms supplied by the film's armor. Everyone was shocked. The gun was supposed to be emptied. I was told I was handed an empty gun. She goes down. I thought to myself, did she faint? Meanwhile, Santa Fe's district attorney, who has worked as a public defender, is he one of those? And later in private capacity, spoke with Vanity Fair and told the publication that in her estimation, following an unofficial test from her team, it is possible for a live round to be discharged from a firearm without the trigger being pulled. Yeah, and so Helena's family is suing him probably for a lot of money for wrongful death. So there is a CGI by the attorneys that Helena's family have hired to pursue the wrongful death suit. They made an entire CGI video and of what exactly happened. And I think the way they showed it was Alec Baldwin pulled the hammer back. But I think what happened, I think what they're talking about is he might have had his finger on the trigger without realizing it when he pulled the hammer back and then the gun went off. After further examination of Baldwin's phone and communication records, Carmack, that's the DA, said she and investigators have to follow each and every claim regarding the supposed lack of safety measures applied and adhered to by the cast and crew during the production. Certainly there's a potential for a producer or producers to be charged if we have direct evidence that they were fully disregarded the safety of others. That's why I keep saying everything's on the table. Baldwin and numerous co-defendants are named in a wrongful death lawsuit filed by Hutchins' widowed husband and son, including Reed, the armorer, and assistant director David Halls, as well as production companies and producers who are accused of flouting industry standard firearm safety guidelines. So the lawyers found 15 instances where they did not follow industry guidelines. The lawsuit names Baldwin and others who are responsible for the safety on the set, as well as reckless behavior and cost-cutting, which led to the death of Hutchins, according to the lawyer. Hutchins' family are suing for punitive damages, funeral and burial expenses, among other things, to be determined at trial. In response, Baldwin's attorneys hit back at the claim as he emphasized that the actor is continuing to cooperate with authorities. They also had text messages, and I don't know if these were directly from... It was previously revealed that Lane Looper, one of the cameramen who walked off the job, texted unit production manager Catherine Rowe Walters days before Hutchins' death to raise concerns, according to a wrongful death lawsuit filed Tuesday by attorneys representing Hutchins' husband and young son. So this is what the text message said. We've now got 3 accidental discharges. This is super unsafe. So it's not looking super good for Alec Baldwin. That's not to say that he'll be criminally charged. Oh yeah, I forgot about that. I know you can fire a single action revolver without depressing the trigger. I've done it, but it was still my thumb on the hammer. Interesting. It's almost like the way that I heard it described. It's sort of like, you know, like drunk driving. Let's say you hit another car, you're driving while intoxicated, and the person passes away. Oh, this is interesting. I'll read this to you next. And the person passes away. So, you know, that would be involuntary manslaughter. Clearly, you didn't intend to do that. Clearly, it was just an accident, but it was your reckless behavior that led up to that, if that makes sense. I don't think he did it on purpose. It's funny, if you watch Tim Pool will say he thinks he did it on purpose. He thinks it was like premeditated. I don't think that. I really, really don't. I mean, who knows? But again, even if it wasn't intentional, yeah, negligence causing death. And what Helena's lawyers are saying was that they're saying we have proof that this was a reckless set, that they were cost cutting, and this led to dangerous situations. They laid out 15 industry standards for handling a prop firearm, and they broke at least 15 of them during the time of production. So that's what they're proving, or that's what they're trying to prove. That's what they're arguing. Arrogance causing death is probably more arrogant. It wasn't a prop gun, it was a live gun. Yeah, that's a good point. You're right. It had a live round in it. It wasn't a prop gun. And apparently, what the lawyer is arguing and what people on the set have said was when Helena was shot, they were actually just rehearsing. And anytime you're rehearsing, you're supposed to have a rubber gun. And they clearly were not using the rubber gun. So this is interesting. We were talking about these super progressive DAs, and I just saw this for Los Angeles, George Gascon. So there's a recall effort against him, and he's one of the super progressive DAs. He could probably win most progressive. I don't know if there's a competition, but he's starting to walk back on some of his. I think he realizes that he's losing. Los Angeles District Attorney Gascon is backtracking on his zero tolerance policy when it comes to prosecuting juveniles as adults and his refusal to prosecute any special circumstance allegations. These 2 directives went out this evening, per sources. So, interesting. So he's walking back on some of his directives. Special circumstance are like, if you do something with a deadly weapon, like gang stuff, all of that. And then he made it a directive that no child could ever be tried as an adult. So even if someone that's like 17 commits a heinous crime, they will not be tried as an adult. And a lot of people were really upset about that. So that's good news that he's backtracking. I hope he still gets recalled. But this just goes to show, I mean, this after San Francisco, like, It feels like you're losing. It feels like all the public pressure that's put on these people, it feels like they don't care. But public pressure does, at the end of the day, mean something. Someone said on Twitter, I don't know if this is true, I didn't see it, but he says, when China and Iran call you out on human rights violations, your government is effed up. Trudeau tyranny. All right, you all, I think that's everything I have for you tonight. Have a good night. I'll see you. I'll probably go live on Sunday. Baldwin needs prison time. Bye. Thank you guys for watching. I'll be live again. It'll probably be like 8 p.m. or 8 earlier in the day. Thanks. Hang in there, Sarah. Later, everyone. Have a good night. Bye. That was fun. Thank you. Toodles. All right. Have a great Friday, everyone. I'll see you later. Bye.